Hi, my name is Preston White. I'm a midshipman at the United States Naval Academy, and I'm doing a story about a merchant marine sailor from World War II. So first, I'm going to go over his uniforms, which his family graciously loaned for me to be able to do this. This uniform is from his time as an assistant cook and seaman on multiple merchant ships early in the war, primarily in Italy, North Africa, the Mediterranean, the Atlantic. Here's the merchant service patch. It says USMS on it. And then here is his rate, which at the time was cook. This is like his enlisted jumper. And it was from 1943, right when he graduated boot camp. And then here's his chief's uniform. And what's kind of interesting is the only way to tell is these little anchors on the cuff. And then he has his medals on here for the different theaters of war that he served in. So we've got the Pacific War Zone, the European, African, Middle Eastern Campaign, the Atlantic, and then here's the Merchant Marine Victory Medal for helping win the war. So now I'm going to go into his service, and I wrote up this whole script, which hopefully I don't miss anything. Again, I want to thank the Parris family for allowing me to be able to do this. So Everett Claude Parris was born in Elk Mountain, North Carolina on July 3rd, 1925 to Claude Parris and Zelmer Luter. Everett was the direct descendant of Colonel Alexander Parris, the owner and namesake of Parris Island, South Carolina, and the governor of South Carolina. During the Civil War, Everett's great-grandfather, great-grandfather's brother, and multiple cousins all died at the Battle of the Stones River with the 60th North Carolina Infantry. As a young man, Everett grew up on a tobacco and cattle farm in Alexander Township. He worked the tobacco fields and tended to the cattle to support his family's income during the Great Depression. He had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. All of the brothers went on to serve during World War II. Everett's father also worked in town as a butcher to supplement the family income. Everett's mother, Zelma, would make the kids all of their clothing by hand. Most of Everett's recreational time was spent in church on Sunday and a weekly prayer meeting on Wednesday nights. Monday morning, December 8th, 1941, Everett was waiting for the school bus when another kid told him about Pearl Harbor.
I was waiting at the school bus. Of course, in the country, you walk quite a ways to get to the school bus. And there probably was a dozen kids that were picked up at that stop. And the conversation turned to that, and no one seemed to know where Pearl Harbor was, but they did have a feeling it was important. It didn't mean a whole lot to me. I never heard of it before.
Back then in the Carolinas, students graduated after only 11 years of schooling. After graduating from French Broad High School in 1942, Everett went north to Newfoundland, where he worked in shipyards for 6 months before deciding to serve his country. Everett joined up with the Merchant Service, the U.S. Merchant Marine, under the War Shipping Administration on Thursday, July 15, 1943. He had turned 18 only about a week earlier. Everett completed basic training under the Coast Guard at Hoffman Island, New York, which included cook and baker school. Basic training mostly consisted of wilderness and sea survival skills. Everett reached his first ship in November 1943, the Liberty ship SS Lawton B. Evans. He started out working as an assistant cook and was told his general quarters position would be loading magazines onto the 20mm anti-aircraft gun. After time, he found out that wasn't true. During combat, Everett was told to go below deck into the ammunition magazine, where he would hand load 20mm rounds into the detachable gun magazines for the crew above. It was mentally taxing to be surrounded by so much ammunition and explosives in the middle of the battle. Of course, it also turned out that assistant cook Parris was constantly sick in the galley. Below decks and the cargo hold of a merchant vessel were really tough places to be during a storm. He requested and was eventually transferred to the deck department. For the next 32 months, Everett sailed around the world. The Lawton B. Evans left Naples, Italy on January 21, 1944, as part of a convoy bound for the amphibious invasion of Anzio. They were hauling ammunition and gasoline with a gross tonnage of 7,197 tons right into combat. The sea conditions were rough and the ship rolled harshly in the waves. One officer aboard, Lieutenant Junior Grade William Bruce Keyes, ordered sailors to solder metal strips across the 3-inch gun projectile ammunition cases so they'd be held in place. In the middle of the night, the crew were informed they had passed the front line and were told to be as quiet as possible. As the Lawton B. Evans approached the beachhead, German planes dove on the convoy and attempted to torpedo and bomb the ships. Luftwaffe aircraft attempted high-level bombing, dive bombing, torpedoes, and even used radio-controlled glider bombs. The gun crew aboard the Lawton B shot down at least 5 enemy planes while under heavy fire. When Everett and his Merchant Marine comrades finally arrived on scene, German tanks and artillery on the shore fired directly at the Lawton B. A railroad gun, the 283mm Anzio Annie, fired on the Evans for days in a row. SS Lawton B. Evans, master of the ship, Mr. Harry F. Ryan, expertly maneuvered the ship to dodge incoming artillery and tank cannon fire, saving her from serious damage. Everett Parris was just about 19 years old the first time he was in combat. Going day by day for the attack, the Lawton B. Evans experienced 4 heavy explosions on January 21st, shaking the vessel very badly. On the 22nd, heavy shell fire from a German shore battery exploded 50 feet from the ship on the port beam, destroying 2 lifeboats and spraying shrapnel into the bridge and shell plating below deck. That night, German planes dropped flares right on top of the ship, frightening the whole crew. On the 23rd and 24th, the vessel experienced further heavy bombing from the air and cannon fire from shore. The ship narrowly avoided bomb hits, shaking violently 3 times on the 25th, 4 times on the 26th, 5 times on the 27th, and again on the 28th. On the night of the 29th, 2 fellow Liberty ships and 1 British Navy cruiser, the HMS Spartan, were hit by radio-controlled glide bombs. The Spartan burst into flames and sank shortly thereafter with nearly 100 casualties. Around midnight, the Lawton B. Evans had to shift anchorage to get away from one of the burning Liberty ships. 2 hours later, that ship, the SS Samuel Huntington, exploded, throwing shrapnel into the air and leaving no trace of the ship. Shrapnel was thrown into the deck of the Lawton B. Evans, narrowly missing multiple crew. Everett pocketed multiple pieces of that shrapnel from that destroyed Liberty ship. The Evans was significantly damaged, and Everett Parris had multiple fractured ribs after being thrown around the ship as a result of the explosion. According to Lieutenant William Keyes regarding the night of January 29th, 1 glider bomb was clearly aimed at our ship from 145 degrees relative, and we think our fire may have been effective because it dropped into the water about 50 yards off the port bow and exploded. The ship was shaken so badly by the concussion, but no concussions or apparent damage resulted. Immediately following this, a dive bomber came in at about 150 degrees relative. Bombs were dropping all over the harbor and all of our ships were firing. However, our 20mm fire took steady and continuous effect on this plane. Part of the carburetor assembly off the plane was blown off by our fire and dropped into number 5 hold, and the plane dove into the sea off our port beam. The master of the ship later turned the Luftwaffe carburetor assembly into naval intelligence at Oran, North Africa. Finally, on January 31st, the Lawton B finished unloading her ammo and gasoline under fire and pulled away from the beachhead and back toward Naples. She used 80 rounds of 3-inch and 4,680 rounds of 20mm ammo, successfully shooting down 5 German planes. According to Everett, the scariest times were when the ship was completely illuminated by German flares and exploding or on-fire Allied ships during the night attacks. The ship was not allowed to fire back at night, but that didn't stop the Germans from scoring many near misses and knocking paint right off the deck and right into the faces of the merchant mariners. For their next trip, the SS Lawton B. Evans ferried German and Italian prisoners of war from Naples to Oran in North Africa as part of a 60-ship convoy. They experienced a U-boat alert on February 18th in 1944, but thankfully escaped harm. Back in Italy, Everett and his crew watched the 1944 eruption of Mount Vesuvius from the deck of the Evans. The rest of February and March was spent ferrying German POWs from Algeria across the Atlantic to Hampton Roads, Virginia. Everett Parris spent April, May, and June 1944 aboard the SS Winding Gulf as a deck seaman. He served on the SS Carthago from June through late August, and in late September was promoted to able-bodied seaman. He served in this capacity on the SS Cornelius Harnett until late December 1944, and was on the SS Charles J. Folger from January 45 until the German surrender in June. He spent the German surrender in Hawaii. On July 18, 1945, Everett was promoted to chief in the Deck Maintenance Division. In November, he completed a foreign voyage on the SS Eugene Field. On one voyage, Parris crewed a ship through the Panama Canal all the way to Hollandia, New Guinea. The vessel was unescorted, and the cargo was kept secret. After the war, he spent a lot of time wondering what he may have transported. In another Pacific voyage, Everett sailed from the east coast to the Philippines at Leyte Gulf, from the Philippines to the Marianas, briefly stopped off at Tinian, and eventually returned back to the east coast. At the time of the Japanese surrender, Everett's ship was pulled into Spain. Everett continued to serve as the maintenance division chief aboard the SS A.J. Cermak until discharge in spring of 1946. For his service, Everett was awarded the Atlantic War Zone Medal, Mediterranean Middle East War Zone Medal, Pacific War Zone Bar, and Combat Bar medals, with stars denoting additional battles. He sailed the vast expanses of the North Atlantic, Mediterranean, South Atlantic, South Pacific, and the Western Pacific Oceans, and gave 3 years of his life to this country. Everett Parris completed his service with the Merchant Marine in April 1946. While Merchant Marine veterans did not receive many benefits, Parris's service did entitle him to an exemption from the draft in any future wars. Despite this protection, Everett chose to join the Army National Guard during the Korean War. He served both as a combat engineer and in a Nike and Ajax missile battery until 1963 and was discharged as a master sergeant. Everett worked in a printing outfit at a newspaper and eventually the government printing office after his time in the Army. He was commended many times and was very successful until his retirement. Everett was involved in the Merchant Marine Veterans, World War II Veterans, and Scottish Rite associations. Merchant mariners played a huge part in transporting men and material around the globe during World War II. At the time, the Merchant Marine was the only racially integrated military branch. Everett served alongside men of all ethnicities and backgrounds at a time the Merchant Marine was the only racially integrated military branch. Everett served alongside men of all ethnicities and backgrounds at a time when it was very uncommon. On one of the ships he signed onto, a Merchant Marine-owned Honduras freighter that brought bauxite from Trinidad to Houston, Texas, he was the only able-bodied seaman that spoke any English. In 1988, President Ronald Reagan gave a speech declaring, "The importance of the Merchant Marine to our national defense was never more clear than in World War II, when at a cost of more than 6,000 lives and with a loss of 733 ships, the American Merchant Marine never faltered in delivering cargo for our armed forces throughout the world. Merchant mariners died at a rate that was proportionally higher than any other branch of service except the United States Marine Corps. Nearly 600 mariners were taken as prisoners of war. During the war, if a man's ship was sunk, he was missing, was captured, or taken out of service for any reason, his pay completely stopped. Despite this cost, the merchant mariners did not receive recognition or traditional veterans benefits until 1988. Congressman William J. Hughes of New Jersey introduced House Resolution 988 to Congress, successfully passing the bill and providing military and retirement benefits to all Merchant Marine veterans of World War II, 4 decades after the end of the war. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it. Thank you again to the Parris family for allowing me to tell Everett's story. It was a really wonderful experience to learn about the Merchant Marine and a branch that really is underrepresented in our history and a lot of people don't know about. So yeah, thank you again for watching.